4, approval of the minutes. Item 5, sign relocation agreement. Item 6, electric vehicle charging station project. Item 7, Lakeside Kid. Item 8, CDBG. Item 9, resolution amending the legislative agenda. I want to thank the judge for that one. I think that's pretty awesome that he came up with that idea. Item 10, reappointments to DCTA. You okay with that?
Yes, I'm fine with it, I'm just teasing, yes.
Can we give y'all a lifetime appointment? Yes.
Oh, yes, you would.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Thank you for reminding me.
Brandon has to recuse himself.
Okay.
Item 11, retreat direction.
So Mayor and Council, I did leave a voice message for you guys earlier, just letting you know that our city management intern is going to be presenting this at the dais. I'm not sure if he's here yet. He's probably coming for the council meeting. So this will be his first time presenting before a council, so.
Very nice.
Be nice.
I'm gonna be motherly, the no-nut wants to take care of them. You be nice.
I actually talked to him beforehand to calm his nerves, and he said it's okay. The council don't seem like they're a bunch of wolves.
Oh, it's on now. It's on now. Challenge accepted.
So be nice. Be nice. He was giving you a compliment.
It's your turn, okay?
I mean, I know I hate it.
I've been the mighty long enough, it's your turn now.
All right. We have any closed session
We
tonight?
have one closed session on personnel.
All right. Any other comments or questions on the agenda before we move into workshop item B? All right, Old Town landscaping and entry features. Stacy and Aya, take it away. And we have Mr. Country as well.
Okay. All right, so Mayor, City Council, Park Fans, back in November, we sent you a memo that kind of expressed what the difficulties we're having in maintaining the fountains out front of City Hall, what some of the alternatives we might consider to better invest our funds, and along with our efforts to try to embrace a pollinative culture, making sure that we're taking care of our winged friends along the way and trying to set an example at what is the hub of government for the city of Louisville. We've come up with some new planting plans that we'd like to explore with you, not only for here at City Hall, but the Visitor Information Center, the Grand, and some of the other areas throughout Old Town. And if you'll remember, one of our first endeavors into this was at the landscaping for Thrive, where we have our bioswales and all the native plants around there. So we asked Brian and the team from Studio Outside, who designed that for us, to come and kind of give us some concepts to consider going forward. He'll go through it with you and give you some general pricing, and then I'll step back up here and kind of tell you what our phased approach for attacking this
Thank you.
Sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks for having me. So when we first started, we wanted to, obviously we're looking at low water use, easier to maintain. So we wanted to look at, what is the inspiration of that? We wanted to look at what happens here naturally, the natural ecosystems. We have prairie and we have kind of the riparian areas where it's going to be shady. So we kind of have those conditions at all the different buildings we'll be looking at. So we kind of started looking at how we've done this before, where we've extracted components of the shade woodland or the prairie and put those into plantings so they're structured in a beautiful way. And that's always where we start is, beauty. We want it to look good, first and foremost, and so we're looking at all seasons of that. And a big part of that is how it's maintained. As Stacy mentioned, these are the study areas we're looking at: City Hall, Grand Theater, Visitor Center, a little bit of Wayne Ferguson, and then north and south Voyagers Plaza. We'll start with City Hall to begin with. Obviously, we're carrying on the forms and the design of those forms that are already intact by the sidewalks and the shape of the fountains. But we did want to break those into different areas because they're very different climatically. In the front, you've got south bright light, but it is very shaded because of the trees. And then in the fountains, obviously we're going to fill those in, but it has a very kind of riparian feel. So kind of, what the plants would be along a creek or something like that. And then once you get up to the building itself, it's much more sunnier, much more open. So we wanted to draw inspiration from the prairie. So we're calling it the Prairie Garden. And then the north side obviously is very shady, so going kind of back to that woodland look. And then out at the corners, obviously they're very sunny and extreme conditions. So going back to that prairie, also pulling in a little bit from West Texas, just so it'll be a little bit more hardy on those really sunny corners. So we've got, I won't get too much, I know we don't have a lot of time, so I won't get into a whole lot of details about each plant, but I can do that another time. But again, just kind of reading, we've got photos shown of the plants. But it's almost all native, they're all low water use, except for in some conditions like this lower basin, where we think it might actually hold water sometimes. It's gonna be hard to get really good drainage, so we've got a rush in there, which is native to riparian habitats and can take water, but also can take dry times as well, because it can kind of take both. And then improving the landscape in all the areas that are currently landscaped, while also removing a little bit of landscape on this further south side. So what we've heard is this kind of gets beat up during events, and it's really hard to maintain plants in there, so we felt like just pushing the lawn to the sidewalk, increasing that lawn area. It also helps offset the cost of some of the other areas where this is actually going to be much easier to maintain, and we're not putting a whole lot of more money back into it. And then the prairie gardens on the front and the sides, using a lot of native grasses, native shrubs and perennials. It's really important to us on this that we have something happening the entire year. So we're creating kind of the skeleton, if you will, with evergreen ground covers and grasses, and then popping in spots of perennial color that'll come up different times of the year. So you have something coming all the time. You can see there's an emphasis on purple, tying to the purple martin. We thought that was appropriate. And then up here on the plaza, up the steps, kind of looking at more of a hill country type look because it is up high and does stay fairly dry. So we're bringing in some plants that occur more often down there, but do really well up here, like Texas mountain laurel, agave, and the Mexican feathergrass. And then on the north side, the woodland garden, using a lot of native woodlands that occur naturally here. So we know they're going to do well. We know they can survive on the natural rainfall. But again, using a mix of grasses, evergreen ground covers, and perennials. So there's always something there. There's always something green, or there's always something blooming. And then the corners, really highlighting those, putting a lot of color, putting a lot of structure with the tall, upright grasses on either side. And these grasses in particular, this is Shenandoah switchgrass, so it's a cultivar of a native. What's really awesome about it is it stays very erect, so it's very architectural. It also has really beautiful fall color. The Shenandoah gets almost like a burgundy to red in the fall, and it stays throughout the winter. So even though it's a grass and it gets cut back, it's really only down for about 2 to 3 weeks. So you leave it up the whole winter, and then you cut it back at the end of February, and you've got new growth by the beginning of March. And then we've added trees. I know there was some deal with the townhomes on the north side of Walters, so we've added a row of Princeton elms. These are a native cultivar again, but it stays very upright, so it has a very urban feel and look. Doesn't really get spread out, won't start busting up the sidewalk as quickly as just a native shade canopy tree would. and great yellow fall color.
Let me add what that deal was. So basically, there was an economic development agreement that allowed them to build as is, that we did not require them, this developer, to put trees, I think from a cost savings perspective, with the understanding that if the city were gonna do, you know, basically landscaping, streetscaping along that we would look at this as a planting zone. So you see a kind of a gravel area in front of that, that's because that's been waiting for if the city's going to do that. There was no obligation, but the idea was if we were gonna do it, they would allow us to do it.
So, and then for, if you wanna look at it later, we've done a bloom chart for all the plants in this area, so you can see what's happening each season throughout the year. To see, you know, we create these when we're designing, so we can make sure that something's happening all year. So we've got all the plants listed there, and I'll go back to the beginning real quick. So all in, this is around 300,000, I think is about what it came to. And we did break out the fountains. I believe it's 340 all in. And we did break out the fountains separately. I believe the Parks group is going to install that phase 1, and that was around 30,000. The next building we look at is the Visitor Center. And kind of the same idea. So we've got two versions of this. This is the full build out. But again, on that west side, obviously we've got a lot of full sun. So we're kind of drawing inspiration from the prairie. A lot of repeat plants with a few little unique introductions of some cultivars of other major grasses that occur in the Blackland Prairie, which is where we're sitting in right here. And then on the east side, we've got existing Yopon hollies that have a lot of character, but they're also creating a lot of shade. So using that shade to create kind of a woodland look garden, and then replacing the plants out of the sign and at the entry to give it a little more, I guess, pizzazz, if you will, a little more show than it has right now. And then, so we've got the bloom chart for that. Oops, going the wrong way. So here's some more highlighted labels. There is there's a low point all the way through here, kind of like a ditch. So the plants there in the middle can take wet conditions a little bit better. So we've designed it, you know, on the edges, those like a little bit drier, and in the middle a little bit more wet. So we do have a few unique plants that we're not using at City Hall, like Greg's Mistflower and the big blue stem, which is really cool. This is a cultivar that stays dark all year. It's almost like a rusty black kind of all year, so it's kind of a feature plant. And then we've got the existing live oak down here, so a little bit more shade tolerant plants down here. And then improving the plants there right at the front door where the rabbit sculptures are, with some evergreen ground cover and flowering perennials. And then the south side it's very similar actually to the woodland garden that we're doing on the north side of City Hall over here, using a lot of the same plants. And then using that Shenandoah switchgrass again at the front underneath the visitor center sign, and then some flowering perennials at the base of that. Again, using a lot of purple. Even the lyre-leaf sage purple, it's ever purple. You know, people say evergreen, but the leaves always stay purple actually, which is kind of cool. And then out at the entry, again, out next to the road, these areas stay a lot hotter. The ground heats up a lot more than the typical soil does. So we pull from kind of West Texas, our really dry areas in this to pick out plants. And then I know there's a strip of lawn kind of on the north side that's pretty hard to maintain or a little cumbersome to maintain. So we propose planting out there something pretty that can just kind of let go and kind of self-maintains itself. So it's easy. And then I know there's already 21,000 allotted for landscape at the visitor center. So we did a 21. The full build out is a little over 60, I believe. So we looked at a 21,000 K version. So that there's planting on the east side already. So we felt like that's a lower priority. On the west side, there is planting, but a lot of it's been removed and a few of it's dying. So we felt like that's a higher priority. So we picked that for the 21K version. And then if you remember, the full bell out went to the sidewalk, we just had to pull it back just a little, to get the numbers down to fit within that 21K. But it could be easily, we designed it so that it could be easily added to. So you'd literally just add the planting from the edge to the sidewalk, and it's the same design. And then we have the bloom chart for the visitor center. And then we looked at Poitras Plaza, so these are fairly simple. On the north side, all we're looking at is changing the existing lawn, which is a large part just dirt now, changing that to an artificial turf, so you don't have to mow it and maintain it. And then on the south side, just adding a few plants to those planting areas that already exist.
I have a question. So, I walk my dog every day. She loves going to that little strip of grass, which I agree with you. I'll say it's 50-50.
Yeah.
Dirt versus grass. So, my only concern about putting artificial turf there is that there's a whole lot of dogs that use potty there.
Which is why there's no grass.
Yeah.
But the artificial turf is gonna start to smell.
So there are things we can do to mitigate that. First and foremost, we can improve the drainage below the artificial turf so that it moves the stinky stuff away as quickly as possible. We can still have an irrigation system so that it routinely washes it down. So we could always add, pet pickups, but those aren't always used. And pee actually does the most damage.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and creates the smell. So really drainage is the most important for that. And then irrigation secondary, so it helps push it away. So we can help mitigate that. We've gone, I don't think you want to do it here, but we've gone as far as doing an enzyme system integrated into the irrigation system. So when it washes it down, it actually spreads enzymes. But that's usually for the solid matter, so it breaks that down.
So, but I assume doing something like that would add cost to it.
It certainly would, yeah.
We
and
can put a sign up that says, please keep pets
That's not
off.
gonna work. It's not gonna work, I'm just telling you.
So we were
That'd be cheap.
both of these all in, this also, so it's about 46. We have 10,000 of that is for interactive art. I know that's a program that some folks are talking about, so we put that in here for now as a placeholder. But another big chunk of that is for the drainage and the artificial turf. So that's covered. If we add irrigation system or the enzyme system, that would add cost. It wouldn't be astronomical by any means, but it
If we
would.
potentially just get rid of the grass there altogether, not put, if there's artificial turf there, I'm telling you dogs are gonna go there.
Why do we need that?
She's telling you that her dog's gonna go there.
So
That's what I
what-
mean.
My dog does enjoy going
Why
there,
we
yes.
want to change it? So a little bit of it is, if you notice, it's a trip hazard.
Yeah.
It's getting stamped down. For us to keep it alive it would take a lot more than what we've got the bandwidth for. The idea of going to the turf is that, one, it would reduce the amount of maintenance. It would create a more solid surface that would be easier to use during special events, to put interactive art out there. And we thought about even integrating an Instagram shot where you kind of cued people to stand at a certain point with City Hall would be in the background looking back through Wayne Ferguson Plaza. So that's what we're looking at through there.
Kristen, did I
Can
hear
we
you ask about
hardscape it?
hardscaping? Yeah.
I'm asking, can we hardscape that
Like-
instead of putting
What type of
Put
hearts?
brick tile in?
some
Like
type of hard
Pavers?
surface?
Will that work on our
Well, so the
seesaws?
only thing I would say about that is that, and this doesn't have to rule this decision, but that plaza is also where during the summertime, our yoga and Pilates in the plaza goes on, because it's the only place with shade, because the plaza itself is pretty, pretty barren out there in the playable space. I was not here when the original plaza was designed, and it was with the intent of that being softer, a softer space between the buildings. So we can certainly look at that.
I do like
It
that.
would drive the cost up
I like
considerably.
the grass there, and I don't mind having artificial turf. I'm just worried, so honestly, this morning, I went down there, and, what it's really become, I just noticed, people throw their trash there, there was like a million cigarette butts, and it's almost like, oh, well, if there's grass there, so you can't see it, and so people just throw their garbage there. And it's just, it seems like it's a maintenance nightmare. If it were a hard surface, people wouldn't be throwing all that stuff right there.
Before, I will say that, if they're not gonna throw it there, they're gonna throw it somewhere. It's not human behavior to say, oh, they did this, so I'll throw it in the
The
receptacle.
trash can that's right there.
It's gonna be somewhere else that's the most convenient.
I think my biggest concern would be if it starts to smell,
Mhm.
we're gonna hear about it
Mhm.
immediately from the businesses
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think-
my concern, is it's gonna smell with that many dogs using it as a potty.
Well, we just need to pass an ordinance against those owners that are letting the dogs
Mhm.
everywhere in Louisville.
So I think a
Can't
lot of
stop
this, I think a lot of this was to try to create a softer center
Yeah.
related from the aesthetic standpoint.
I like
Obviously,
the
if we're
idea.
doing pavers, I don't know what the cost differential is on
We
that.
have to look at
And then
Well,
the
if we
tenure-
put the
the one-year
interactive-
fees and all that stuff.
If we put the interactive in there with turf, it's not just gonna be a, you know,
Yeah.
a turf bowling alley, it's gonna have things that break it up, like these seesaws.
Yes, I saw them, and I want a seesaw.
I want a seesaw.
But if we have a seesaw there, then they're not gonna be doing yoga there though.
Oh, you haven't seen these yoga people.
I think they
Go
do.
yoga?
They may use the seesaw.
How about we
use the
put
seesaw.
together some options for
Yeah.
us to consider?
Yeah,
I think,
I'm not against the turf.
uh-huh,
I visually, I think it makes sense, softens the area, that kind of thing, but I just, the last thing I want is the business owners right there
Having a smell.
have it, because we will immediately have to remedy it.
Right.
It's just, that's what's gonna have to happen.
Okay,
All right, well, let's
look
look
at
at
other
that.
options.
I will say some of this artificial turf now is phenomenal.
Yeah.
If you go look at the Plaza Castle Hills, where they've taken
Mhm.
out, they've taken out the reflecting pool,
Mhm.
they put in that, you wouldn't know until you got right up on it.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know how that permeates. I hadn't thought about dogs on the bathroom on that, but I'm sure they do, because it's a big green space.
They've improved incredibly, and they make a special one that's canine microbiome or whatever, and then a woven back, so it just
yeah.
flows right through.
So,
Yeah, it's-
so as long as we're mitigating for that on the front end and not having to catch up to it later on.
So would the babies be for something like that, like kind of holds it down the sidewalk? Is that?
yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're trying to do is once we get a full staff, which, you know, in the year 2027, we're gonna, you know, that.
Can I
that's
quote you
a-
on that?
Yeah, okay, I'm hopeful.
If we don't,
Um,
the hair would be out.
I know, I'm aggressive. So, you know, our thoughts are that we will be improving what our maintenance is of like the sidewalks and the trash cans around there and how we can improve that from a standpoint. Because quite frankly, it's not just in that area.
Mhm.
People who throw their coffee cups, you know, that they're still half full, they drain all over the place. Dogs are going in other places. So it's not just
Yes.
that area, and there's just
You're
a whole
right.
bunch of behavior that we need to improve and try to catch up with. So we'll come up with some strategies for y'all to consider.
Let me ask a question before we move on to this part here. There's so many wonderful plants that you presented here. So a couple of questions. One, and I forget the difference between perennial and annual, which one comes back all the time, which we every plant. What's the maintenance on this? So it's 300,000 put in there, is it 100,000 a year to maintain it, is it 50? Just thoughts.
Well, I don't know the cost, but I personally think it's easier. They should keep out weeds better than they stay mulched. You don't have, there's no hedging, you know, there's no typical trim hedging of bushes. The main thing is that the perennial, most of the perennials in the fall are winter. After the first freeze, you cut them back. That's it. And then the grasses, right before the beginning of spring, you cut them back.
Do you think maintenance on this will be on par unless it's maintained?
Yeah, I think in terms of total time, once you get used to it, it should be less.
I will say though, that's us getting to year 3.
Okay.
We have to get to year 3 so what they're established. It's gonna be some hoofing to get to year 3, but once we're there, then that should let us.
And that'll be about the same time we're fully staffed.
That's right, then we'll be perfect, it'll be awesome, right?
The other question I have is that I'm real excited about this, and I love seeing all the different plants and things that are talking about putting down there. Has there been thought about placking some of these? It becomes a destination of itself. You go down and you look at the beautiful grasses and.
I mean, like some interactive
Yeah, or just little
or
things.
interpretive
This-
things, that say, yes.
This is what this is.
Yeah,
I think it would be great for visitors, and especially if somebody
Yeah.
comes to come learn about Louisville, and they can learn about the plants that
Yeah.
they can see.
say that's one of the items on our sustainability implementation is, especially with our, some of our green infrastructure is having, and that's something that you were pushing for before, is having signs, but also with the plantings as well. So
Yeah.
really, you come down to downtown for an educational experience as well.
So these were just some idea images for that interactive art. Not a whole lot of studies gone into that yet. We just pulled some things that we've seen before and really like.
The seesaws are
The
actually,
seesaws are cool.
they're at the University of
Seesaws.
Arizona campus, so yeah, they're awesome.
And a lot of these are from the same group, Creo, which designed these, which is a great
At
group.
least they were there.
We see a lot of swings around, that's what we're talking about. The large swings. But we actually like the mirrors a lot. Those are very interactive, especially with the different shapes and being able to move them. Those are always a big hit.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then we got the seasonality chart. We are looking, as I mentioned, the bottom strip of Wayne Ferguson. The bioswale plants failed a long time ago, it looks like. So we're going in with something that's a lot more hardy than what they originally specified. We have those original plans, so we know what was there.
Okay.
And probably what went wrong, probably didn't have enough water.
Yeah.
There's only a few inches of soil in there, like 4 inches of soil, and the rest is gravel. So we're gonna add some soil. We're also going with horsetail reed, which is, people want to get rid of it sometimes. It's so aggressive. But since it's in a concrete box, should be just fine. And then I believe Parks is already starting to remove the boxwoods on that south strip, so we're suggesting some replacements for that. With some of the plants we're using elsewhere, meadow sedge is a native ground cover that does awesome. Gulf Coast penstemon we mix with it. So and we do this in a few other places that we've shown already. But what we like to do is have the perennial mix with the evergreen, so the perennial blooms, and then when the flower dies and it shrinks back down, you still have the evergreen cover, and it doesn't. There's never a bare patch when we mix it like this. And then we do have a little bit of an overhang there because of the bioswale. So we've got a native vine that likes to hang, so just to kind of soften those concrete walls a little bit. And the seasonality chart for that. The last one we looked at was the Grand Theater. So this is the biggest study we did because we also looked at redoing the interior courtyard. I know y'all looked at building additions and other stuff like that, so we kind of saw this as a backup plan. But we did study that inner courtyard to make it, first and foremost, ADA accessible, which it isn't now, but also a beautiful, comfortable place for people to be, which I think, if the trees had survived, it'd be a lot more comfortable now. Obviously, they did not do well, so it's a hot, it looks like an uncomfortable space. But we also, so we wanted to make it more comfortable, more usable, also a place for sculptures to go for temporary art installations. But we'll get into that a little. So the planting is very similar to, obviously we're creating a palette for all of Old Town so that it looks congruent. It looks like the city of Louisville. So you're going to see a lot of the same plants. Maintaining the trees here, but we are redoing the plaza. Yeah, so I'll go into this a little more depth. Obviously it's from building face to building face, we're starting brand new. We've got a strip of artificial turf in the center. So that's usable, but softens the area with green. We're utilizing, there's drains there's spouts that come off the building into drains. Those drains aren't functional anymore. They're actually above the ground. So we want to cut those off, drop them below a strip of decorative gravel. So those become your bands that you see here. And then once you get into pavement, those bands turn into an integral colored concrete, a paver, something like that carries that color across. The rest area, we are looking at pavers again. They're just, they go in really quick. They're easy to replace if they break, things like that. They do cost more up front for sure, but in the long term, we've had a lot more luck with that. But we do have some concrete also, replacing the concrete here, replacing the steps so the red pavement goes away. But we are recommending an integral color. So the color goes all the way through. It's not a stain that can wear off. As it wears, the color is still all the way through. And then replacing the flexi pave out in the front with the pavers that have already been used at the corners, the red kind of historic brick. They're not historic, but they look historic out at the corners. And then finally integrating some seating benches on the sides for people to sit and rest. But still keeping the main center open for large events, people progressing through there.
So just had a quick comment. I do like my dog does not go up here. I don't see a whole lot of dogs up here, so I think this is a good location. I will say, so my son sometimes plays on turf fields, and sometimes the turf has like these granules in it, like
Mhm.
these black,
Yeah,
and it is so hot
Yep.
sitting on the turf. It's hotter than, just because it's pulling in the
and those are
heat.
what become really stinky is that rubber that's in there.
So let's just not
But
do that.
yeah, we would not do that.
That would be very bad.
And this has an integrated thatch in it that actually helps with the cooling.
This one has 3
Perfect.
little plastic daisies in one corner.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think because of the size of this one, I think we would want its own irrigation system, which helps keep it cool and keeps it clean as well. Even though it's not necessarily a dog park.
Gotcha.
Any questions?
You had me at Winnie Parks.
Do what?
I said you had me at Winnie Parks.
Oh.
That's been driving me crazy for 30 years.
Wrap it up.
I do want to go back to the front of City Hall before we're done here.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just, so again, whoops. Same, on the south, sunny prairie plants, kind of same thing we're doing elsewhere. On the north side, there's a ditch to a big drain, and it's not showing up as prominent as it is, but there's been a lot of erosion there, so some specialty plants there that can hold the soil, take wet and dry conditions in the shade, which is pretty specialized. So these plants are gonna be some of the different ones that you haven't seen yet. And then the seasonality chart, and then we can go back to City Hall.
Slide 6. There we go. So this outer band here with the empty circles,
Yes.
those are the crepe myrtles, correct?
Those are, yes, we're proposing to remove those crepe myrtles.
Okay. Council. I mean,
wanted to-
I'm the native plant guy, but those are amazing
Yeah,
when
I like
they're
the
in bloom.
myrtles. Why would we want to move them?
I think it's just the plant choices, so it
It opens up a lot more sunlight
Yeah.
for the lawn there. But man, does that look glorious when it's going on, so,
I'm not a huge crepe myrtle fan, but,
and that's fair too.
I'll agree to it if you go out there and plant them.
No, they're already there. We'd be getting rid of
I
them.
want you to dig them up, then replant them.
Well, yeah, they look good, my friend.
I mean, obviously the pros are the aesthetics. They look, the bark is beautiful. It's one of the few trees blooming in the middle of August, which is pretty specialized. The downside in this particular location is the amount of shade that's in there. Second is the aphids and the mess they create, and they're especially drawn to crepe myrtles. So they keep that sidewalk pretty messy and dirty.
if you kept the crepe myrtles, can you just choose different plants?
Yeah, I think if we kept the crepe myrtles, these would become a planted strip again. We would just pick plants that would work.
No, I don't get a vote, guys, but
I keep telling you that.
if you look out there in the front,
it's a good picture, it's a good picture.
it's, you know, and so are you gonna get some kickback, or are you
Well,
creating?
what if we just moved some of them, like every other one,
Well, and, you know,
thin it out?
thin it out, you know, like the ones in the middle, I don't, there's like 6 of them right in the middle, up center, those could go, and that wouldn't bother me, but it's that crescent across the front of City Hall that's really intriguing and makes a really great visual statement. But it's not native, and it creates some of those other issues. But it is definitely something that residents are going to see. So, I'm just throwing it out there.
I think Stacy and I have talked about it, and I think, we could go either way. So that was something that, she brought it to my attention early on.
Yeah, so, I mean, for us, aside from the shade thing, is they do cause quite a bit of maintenance. The amount of stickiness that gets on there when the aphids are alive and barfing, and,
That's not a plus?
well, it is.
Barfing.
That's what it is. And so, like Claire said, we could go either way. If we could thin them out, maybe that, if you're looking for the color and that some color remains, maybe not all of it, that's something we could look at. There are a couple of clusters that maybe it would make sense to take away, but if you're looking for that just front view of color, I think that's something we could probably work with.
If those went away, is that, and everything else went in place, is that now 100% Texas native?
No, there's a couple of things that aren't Texas native but are drought tolerant.
And really, you're getting rid of the beds that they're in and making that all lawn is the
Right.
maintenance.
Right.
So
Right.
you're not going to new natives that you're planting in there, it's just lawn.
Yeah, we're bringing them on then. Yeah.
So, which creates a really clean, modern line across the front of City Hall too, so.
I like the cream rolls.
If
Even Fox and
if we're
Gold.
gonna keep them though, we need to thin them. We need to take 2 out for every one that's there.
We'll try to look at what would create balance.
you know,
Yes.
You know?
if you've got an interest in that, take a look at it and kind of get a visual on it. I mean, it's hard to make these decisions
Yeah, we're gonna-
based on a picture here versus
Yeah.
what's out front.
For sure.
So I'd recommend council, if you've got some feedback on that particular one, to do that between now and the next time we see this, I guess.
And also, what gets me really excited about these plans is Stacy, this becomes a sales brochure
Yeah.
for the native grassland, native efforts for the houses.
Yeah, right.
I can see things inside of Callaway's or whatever, but I can't visualize what it looks like plan
Yeah.
going out. So
Right.
This is great, yeah.
Yeah, when they do the update to the Texas Monthly article in
Right?
2 years,
When they
then
talk
that would
about
be a
it.
good one, that'd be a good reason to come back.
Yeah.
Was that everything for this presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, unless you needed to talk about how we're gonna pay for it.
Basically, we're gonna have to phase it in.
Yeah.
We might not hear that.
I think,
All right.
so council's in broad strokes in approval of this, an agreement that we need to move in this direction?
One quick question, what about these freezing temperatures we've had here lately, the last 3 or 4 years?
Shouldn't hurt this stuff.
Yeah.
That-
So like, as I drove around town, one thing I really noticed is that the native plants weren't harmed. They bloomed a little later that year, or they
Yeah.
popped up a little later. It was all the non-natives that got wiped out.
Well, thank you, appreciate the,
Thank you.
appreciate the overview. I think we have Mr. Cumpy up next.
Yes, sir, I don't think I can finish in 3 minutes.
No, I don't think you can either.
But we can get
They give you a
started.
yeoman's job though. And then we'll circle back to it.
Missed the one. So as we figure out whether we have it here, I can go get it.
Well,
It's on
and
the shared drive.
and we could just move in and do it, come back and do it. So I think based on the amount of time we have, if we're still looking for the file.
I think we can sign on yourself.
Yeah, okay, I think we're gonna put the workshop on hold, we'll come back to it. And so we're not gonna close it, but we're gonna go ahead and take a break and we'll start up our regular session here in about 4 minutes. All right, good evening. It is 7 p.m. and we're calling this regular session of the Louisville City Council to order. If you would please join me in a moment of contemplation. Amen. Councilmember Green, would you lead us in the pledges?
Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Item 1, public hearing, consideration of an ordinance granting a zone change from single-family residential 7.5 district zoning to Old Town Mixed Use 2 district zoning on approximately .235 acres legally described as Lot 1, Block 4, OB Dick subdivision, located at 450 Edward Street, as requested by Darna Hoxha, the applicant, on behalf of Rabji and Besmir Basiri, my apologies on the names, of the property owners. This is case number 23-01-2-Z. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property from single-family residential 7.5 to Old Town Mixed Use 2 to redevelop the existing single-family lot into 5 townhomes facing Edna Street for consistency with the recent development to the south, which has 3 duplexes facing Edna Street. The request aligns with the Old Town Master Plan and the Louisville 2025 Vision Plan big moves of Old Town and diverse and thriving neighborhoods by providing higher density housing options and maintaining compatibility with the existing neighborhood. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended unanimous approval 7-0 on February 21st, 2023, and it is recommended that the City Council approve the ordinances set forth in the caption above. We do have Mr. Richard Lutke, our Planning Director, available for questions, and we have Ms. Darden Hoxha here available and is actually here to speak. No, they are supporting, but they do not wish to speak, but are available for any questions. Council, are there any questions? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Council, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve the ordinance set forth in the caption.
I have a motion and a second. City Attorney, City Councilor, there's the word I was going for.
This is an ordinance of the Louisville City Council amending the zoning ordinance by rezoning approximately .235 acres legally described as Lot 1, Block 4 of the OB Dick subdivision located at 450 Edward Street from single-family residential district zoning to Old Town Mixed Use 2 district zoning, correcting the official zoning map, preserving all other portions of the zoning ordinance, determining that the zoning amendment herein made promotes the health, safety, and welfare of the city, providing for repeal or severability, a penalty, and an effective date, and declaring an emergency.
Council, if you please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Item 2, public hearing, consideration of the advisability of improvements in the proposed Lakeside Crossing Public Improvement District within the city of Louisville. Chapter 372 of the Local Government Code requires that a public hearing be held to determine the advisability of the proposed Public Improvement District, or PID. MM Frontiera 35 LLC filed a petition to establish the Lakeside Crossing Public Improvement District, the Lakeside Crossing PID, with the City Secretary's Office on January 10th, 2023. On February 20th, 2023, the City Council approved a resolution accepting the petition of the Lakeside Crossing PID and called for a public hearing to be held during this City Council meeting, March 20th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Notice of the hearing was published in the newspaper of general circulation and included the estimate costs of the improvements, boundaries of the property, proposed district, proposed method of assessment, and the proposed apportionment of costs between the improvement district and the municipality. Following this public hearing, a separate item to approve the creation of the Lakeside Crossing PID is on the agenda for consideration. It is recommended that the City Council conduct a public hearing considering the advisability of the Lakeside Crossing PID as set forth in the caption above. And we do have Ms. Marichelle Samples, Director of Economic Development, and Julie Partain, our partner at Bracewell LLP, available for questions. Council, if there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Council? We don't have a second reading on this? Okay, so that one's done. Item 3, public hearing. Consideration of an ordinance amending Article 7, Uses, Parking Requirements, Supplemental Use Regulations, and Certain Distance Requirements of Volume 2 of the Louisville City Code, known as the Unified Development Code, by adding Section 7.3.22, establishing supplemental use regulations for multifamily dwellings and amending Exhibit 7.2-3, mixed use zoning districts, to add a reference to such regulations. Over the past few years, the market for multifamily use in Old Town has increased significantly. However, the commercial market is still evolving and will likely take several years before ground floor retail is viable in most locations. To ensure adequate space for commercial uses when the market demand arrives, staff is proposing code amendments that add 8 standards to require flex space or retail-ready space in multifamily projects zoned Old Town Mixed Use 2 or Old Town Center on Church Street, College Street, Main Street, and Mill Street. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on March 7th, 2023, and continued the public hearing to March 16th, 2023. It's recommended that the City Council approve the ordinances set forth in the caption above. Mr. Ludke is available, our Planning Director, for any questions.
Mayor, I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. I did just want to say, I want to commend staff for bringing this to us. This is very smart, because we know that there is, the long term, that we need retail on those bottom floors, but we also know we can't get there right now. And so if that space is going to be a deal killer for those developments to happen right now, this is a really great just connection between what we can get right now and what we know we need in the future. Ensuring that what we do now can actually happen now and the markets can support it, but that we can also have what we ultimately want, and that the parking is provided for, and that the building standards are met. I just think this is incredibly smart, and so I could not take away from this opportunity just to say how happy I am with our staff that you're bringing this to us. I think this is huge, even though it doesn't seem very excited. It's not an exciting, sexy thing. I think it's wonderful. Thank you for bringing this to us.
I'm loving it too.
All right, any other comments? Council will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion to close the public hearing passes 6-0. Council will entertain a motion to approve the ordinances set forth.
Moved to approve the ordinances set forth in the caption.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. City Attorney?
This is an ordinance of the Louisville City Council amending Article 7, Uses, Parking Requirements, Supplemental Use Regulations, and Certain Distance Requirements of Volume 2 of the Louisville City Code, known as the Unified Development Code, by adding Section 7.3.22, establishing supplemental use regulations for multifamily dwellings, and amending Exhibit 7.2-3, mixed-use zoning districts, to add a reference to such regulations, providing for repeal or severability, a penalty, and an effective date, and declaring an emergency.
Council, please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Item D, Visitor Citizens Forum. Speakers must address their comments to the mayor rather than to individual council members or staff. Speakers should speak clearly and state their name and address prior to beginning their remarks. Speakers will be allowed 5 minutes for testimony. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, and similar demonstrations will not be permitted. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the City Council is restricted from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Action can only be taken at a future meeting. City Secretary, do we have any comment cards or speaker requests? All right. Item E, consent agenda. All of the following items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests. For a citizen to request removal of an item, a speaker card or e-comment must be filled out and submitted to the City Secretary. City Secretary, do we have any e-comments?
No, sir, we do not.
All right, council, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Consent agenda is approved, 6-0. Item F, regular hearings, number 10.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Item 10, consideration of reappointing Mayor Gilmore to the Denton County Transportation Authority, DCTA Board of Directors, and consideration of reappointing Councilmember Green as the alternate member of the DCTA Board of Directors. DCTA bylaws require that board members and alternates have experience in the field of transportation, business, government, engineering, or law, and reside within the territory of the authority. DCTA board members serve for 2-year terms. Mayor Gilmore and Councilmember Green's terms are expiring, and they have both expressed an interest in continuing to serve as the city's representatives on the DCTA Board of Directors. That the City Council approved the 2023 City Council Retreat Direction and the 2023-2024 City Council priorities as presented. Whoa, that was an odd sentence. We're going to kill that one. Just stop at the DCTA Board of Directors. It's recommended that the City Council reappoint Mayor Gilmore and Councilmember Green to the DCTA Board of Directors as set forth in the caption above. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to reappoint Mayor Gilmore and Councilmember Green to the DCTA Board of Directors as set forth in the caption.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. All right, motion passes 5-0, and I'll speak for Councilmember Green. Thank you so much for the opportunity to serve. It's a good time. Item 11, consideration of the 2023 City Council Retreat Direction and the 2023-24 City Council priorities. During the City Council retreat held on March 10th and 11th, City Council gave direction on various items and set 9 priorities for the upcoming year. Staff would like to review the direction and priorities with the City Council to ensure that the final wording and interpretation of the goals matches the City Council's intent. We do have presenting tonight our City Management Intern, Mr. Charles Dyer. It's been great seeing Mr. Dyer here at City Hall. He's been putting in tons of work. Hopefully he's getting out of it what he put into it. But sir, when you are ready, please present away.
City Manager's Office. I am an MPA student at UNT, finishing up my last semester, and I have been given the wonderful and anxiety-inducing task of presenting before you tonight. Just to ensure that city staff fully capture council intentions on workshop items and priorities. So on the workshop items from the City Council retreat on March 10th and 11th, we'll start with the economic health and budget calendar. Staff will move forward with the budget calendar, assuming no tax increase election for fiscal year 2024. On the homestead exemption, staff will not pursue that at this time. The same goes for the stormwater drainage fee exemption for religious organizations, but the city will do a better job at educating the public on existing credit programs. On mall redevelopment, we'll move forward with the plans and negotiations with property owners and developers, as well as the Blue Ribbon Committee work for the public infrastructure portion of that project. On Old Town TOD master plan, we'll work to finalize the infrastructure component of that plan, soliciting public input, and we'll bring that plan back to City Council for adoption. On the infrastructure replacement analysis, we'll work to refine our model and increase infrastructure investment for future needs. And lastly, Grand Theater expansion study. The city will move forward with the home option only and no accompanying Blue Ribbon project. Are there any clarifications or questions on these directions?
Council.
We'll give you a break this time.
Much appreciated.
We'll give you a solid 8.5.
He started with a joke. I think that was good.
Then we'll move on to the priorities. Council just renewed their commitment to the existing priorities, but there are just some nuances and perhaps slight shifts in focus within the actual priorities themselves, as well as updating any language in the priorities. For example, where in a previous edition of the priorities we were planning a small park, it would now say breaking ground on, for example, Glory Park this spring. So on those priorities that had an update or a substantive change, I'll cover those here. On city infrastructure and facilities, staff will work to develop street designs that promote safer driving behaviors, i.e. not speeding, and then facilitate the work of the Blue Ribbon Committee working toward a bond election in May of 2024. As for the 10-minute walk to a park goal, the city will implement its recently adopted healthy infrastructure plan, and address park needs in a sustainable way, incorporating key performance indicators and the maintenance of parks so that they're maintained in a satisfactory way before adding parks onto the existing system. On the Old Town development, staff will refine the plans and strategies, encouraging residential ownership in the area, as well as adding a brewery, a small grocer, and the expansion of the existing distillery. We'll also work to include Denton County as a participant in the extended and expanded TERS number 1. And we've already covered the mall redevelopment, but it's just changing the language in there, moving from the planning to the negotiations for that project. Are there any clarifications or questions on those priorities? Then staff recommends that the council approves the 2023 City Council Retreat Direction and the 2023-24 City Council priorities as presented.
Council, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the 2023 City Council Retreat Direction and 23-24 City Council priorities as presented.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Passes 6-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item G, reports. Reports about items of community interest regarding which no action will be taken. Can I start with Councilmember Jones?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Cade?
No report. I just like to say thank you again on the council retreat and the phenomenal job that staff did. And we just need to keep chugging away.
Councilmember Meredith?
Yeah, I also would like to say this thing about the council retreat. I think it was, everything went very well. You make it very hard to make any comment at all, so I think that's a good representation of how well the staff does and all this stuff. Also, I want to give a shout out to the staff for the St. Patty's Day thing. I think it was well attended. I think it was some of the best music I've seen out there, so kudos to that. I've also got some library activities for the week. Take a Break Tuesdays for teens aged 13 to 18, Tuesday, March 21st, 4 to 5:15 p.m. No registration required at Teen Point. Job Seeking Brown Bag Lunch, Resumes for Adults, Wednesday, March 22nd, noon to 1 p.m. Registration is required at the Crawford Meeting Room. And Preserving Your Harvest for Adults, Friday, March 24th, 3 to 4 p.m. No registration required at the Crawford Meeting Room. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Troyer?
If I can speak. Yes, Mayor. I have several things going on at the Louisville Grand Theater. First of all, performances. We have Stefan Eustache, sorry about the pronunciation, partially funded by City of Louisville Artist Microgrant, and that's on March 23rd. The Black Box Songwriter Series, Shake Russell, is presented by the City of Louisville on March 24th. Swan Lake, Act 2 and other works will be presented by Lake City's Ballet Theater on March 31st and April 2nd, sorry. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, presented by the Houston Russian Theater, April 7th. You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, presented by Our Productions Theater Company, April 7th and 8th, with 2 shows on the 8th. And as always, the acoustic jam sessions on Friday evenings, presented by the Visual Art League of Louisville, 6 to 9. Activities, we have training, Louisville Arts Supply Grant, Louisville Arts Support Grants, presented by the City of Louisville on March 23rd. And then exhibitions, A Slice of Life, presented by the Visual Art League of Louisville, February 25th through April 1st. And Louisville ISD Middle School Art Show, presented by the LISD, March 24th through April 8th, which happens to be my birthday. So, a good.
The 24th through the 8th?
24th, yes.
Because I'd take that.
I get every one of those. And that's all.
Thank you, sir. City Attorney? City Secretary?
So I'm just going to say something real quick, okay? Because most everyone in this room knows that I've advised that I'm retiring, but I still have 4 more meetings. So I'll speak later, but I just want to thank this council because y'all have been great.
Thank you, Julie, and we are all stockpiling lots of things to say about you.
But you're leaving us anyway.
Mr. Lutke,
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Ms. Samples? No report. Mr. Selma?
No report.
And we're up to the lake.
I don't have the lake levels today.
Ah, here we go.
Mayor, I just want to let you know that the lake is 0.03 feet over the normal pool elevation. Once again, I'm not sure how they measure it that accurately, but that's what it is.
Thank you, sir.
I was going to mention on March the 25th, from 1 to 5 p.m. at the Thrive, we'll be having the second annual Nothing But Net event. A lot of participation from a lot of different city departments there, so I look forward to getting some engagement from the community, and there will be food, prizes, In-N-Out Burger, so a lot of fun stuff going on, so just let council residents know about that. In addition to that, also Sunday, March the 26th at the Louisville Animal Shelter, Operation Kindness will be providing free microchips and rabies vaccinations for your dog or your cat for $5. So just wanted to definitely decrease price for that and also free microchips. So
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. No report, sir. Thank you, sir. All right. Councilmember Green?
I did have a little report, but Mr. McGinn has completely stolen my thunder. So I will say that last year we took advantage of the free microchip clinic, and they do everything for you. Take advantage of this service. They even register the chip for you and put your information in. Do it.
That's great stuff. City Manager? I did have 2 things briefly. In today's consent agenda, there was a piece of proposed legislation that we are supporting that was created by Judge Holman and several of the local judges. What they found is over COVID, there were some rules that were loosened that allowed them to use Zoom or other video-based programs to allow folks, usually these are traffic issues. You come zipping through town and you get a speeding ticket. Well, if you're from Wyoming or New Mexico or something like that, you could technically end up with an outstanding warrant here in the state of Texas, and having to come back to Texas to get that cleared is pretty burdensome, or it can be. So Judge and I were talking about this, and it was probably going away, and he brought it to my attention and said, hey, I asked him if he felt this was a great service or would extend better service to our residents, at which point he said yes, he did, and then 48 hours later he came up with a piece of legislation and put it out there. So I'm proud of Judge Holman showing the Louisville way about how we make things better for residents and really stepping forward and taking initiative on that. So council has gone ahead and approved that, so we'll be talking about that to our legislators this week down in Austin. So I wanted to thank Judge Holman for that bit of work that he's done over the last couple of weeks. Also wanted to mention that Louisville has been written up again in Texas Monthly. So you may have seen something about Sullivan's Barbecue here a couple of months back. Well, this month we got written up for what we're doing with native plantings and native landscaping and the program there. Folks, this would not have happened without Louisville residents saying that this is a differentiator, that how we deal with our natural spaces is important to residents. And it wouldn't have happened without our friends of Leela, without our master gardeners, master naturalists, and of course our parks team. We're out here, we're doing the work, and we're giving the examples. So folks, it may seem like a little thing, but we're making waves. We're making a difference in people's lives. We're making a difference in how we deal with water and all the other things that come with it and sustainability. So I really appreciate everybody all the pieces that made this happen for Texas Monthly. I'm not sure when the next print edition comes out, but it is online. You can just go to Texas Monthly and Google Louisville and you'll find it. Or you can hit my social media because it was all over that a couple of days ago. With that, we're going to go ahead and return to the workshop session. Mr. Kunke has a presentation. And James, are we gonna do that here, or are we gonna do that in? Got it. All right, so we're gonna go into the workshop room. Everyone is welcome to join us there, and we're just gonna have a discussion on a couple of other items and then break out to here.
They didn't realize maybe try and draw attention to it. We've done some branding in the area. One thing we have not done is mark the boundaries in the entryways. Do I need a tap or? Okay, what? So this is some of the things that we do now. You've seen them around. We've got the brand and the logo. We've done the boxes. We've done signs. We've done banners. We've done kiosks. We've done signs on the streets. So it's out there. But all of these are interior to Old Town. A couple of signs are close to the border. It's all interior. When you see these, you're already at Old Town. You've passed the boundary to get there. But entry features are something that are used pretty commonly to mark geographic districts, especially historic districts, but also downtowns, cultural districts, neighborhoods. They're pretty popular. They can be very successful. Generally, there's one of 4 forms, although they can mix and match 1, 2, 3, even all 4 of those forms. You'll have overhead signage, ground level signage, an art feature, or decorative landscaping. And as we'll see some examples, I'm going to show you all 4 of those examples. You'll see a lot of times cities do choose to combine those into several. It's not a new conversation for us. First time I was involved in the conversation was back in 2004 when we got a Old Town wayfinding presentation by the Babender Group, and we installed a few signs. There were still some on Main Street. In fact, there's still one down there on Main Street by the Huffines house. And then we didn't go much farther with that. And then we talked about it again, as you see, all these other times we've talked about it. So there's a lot of interest. It's just been difficult to make a choice and pull a trigger on whether or not we're actually going to do something. Obviously, there's a lot of priorities. So this is overhead signage. Now, this is not overhead signage. This is kind of what we do overhead right now. These are the overhead banners. We have one on Main. We have one on Mill. We use them to celebrate and announce events. Overhead signage has been around a very long time. In the 1800s, at least, they've had them. There's a lot from the turn of the century, the 1900s, 1920s. They almost always feature the name of the district going across the street, or sometimes a large pedestrian way. But they're overhead, almost always the name of the district or the name of the city. They're typically placed at the edge of the district, kind of like when you pass through the archway, you have crossed into that district. Sometimes you will see them placed closer in, or it'll be in pairs. But generally at the edge of a district, and we'll show you on a map where you've got options to do both. Some of your decisions to make there is your material selection, because you'll have 2 columns, one on either side. Having just one hanging over doesn't really work, and I'm not an engineer, but it just doesn't look right. But you have 2 columns. Are they metal? Are they stone? Are they some other material? The design of the metal span, is it open? Is it closed? The signage itself, the lettering, and lighting. So here's some examples. This is in Beaumont, Texas. This is actually installed in 2002, and it marks their Crockett Street district. You'll see here it's got brick columns. It is lighted on the top and in the sign. It has an open span across, curved, and it does have the individual letters that are interior lighted. This one is in Fort Worth. It was built in 1910. This is one of those historic ones. And this has kind of the stucco, is it stucco? I'm going to stick with stucco. It's got the non-stone stone columns on either side. It has an open span but a closed sign. The letters are built into the sign, and the only lighting it has is the overhead lights that were added later. Originally it had no lighting. This one is in Corsicana, and this is new-ish. It was built in 2017, and we put the cost here just to give you an idea. We didn't get costs on all of these. I'm like the one in 1910, nobody has a clue. This one was $63,000 in 2017, so cost escalation. This sign, exactly as they show it, would cost more than that today. Again, here you have a combination column, brick and metal. Brick and metal. It's an open archway, and the letters are actually built into the arch. And it is, again, exterior lighting, up lighting on each individual letter. Then we have ground signage or monument signage. We have these monument signs around town, are at the borders of the city, or at gateways into the city, such as at Valley Ridge and 35. These generally require the least ongoing maintenance, but they often can be quite expensive to put in initially. They almost always feature the name of the district or the city. Almost always feature the name in there somewhere. And sometimes, though, it's just a familiar icon. If you have an icon that's very familiar, people recognize, they know a certain symbol or logo means that district, and it might just be that, but it's less common. You have to establish the brand before that can happen. You might picture if the bird had become so well known that everybody in Texas recognized the bird icon as Louisville, you could take the word Louisville off and it would work. We're not at that point, and so we have both. These are typically placed, again, at the edge of the boundary, at the boundary of the district. So as you're approaching the district, you see the sign, you pass the sign, you've entered it. It's almost like a little vertical force field that you pass through. It's typically alongside a road or in a median of a road, sometimes along a major pedestrian way, but not as common. It's usually really geared toward drivers that enter the area. Very often used with landscaping, decorative landscaping of some sort. And then the last item on here, again, materials, design, and content, and if you want lighting, or decisions we'll have to make. So here's some examples. This is New Braunfels. This is pretty new, built in 2020. All kinds of materials. This is what an artist would call a mixed media creation. It's got wood, it's got metal, it's got acrylic, it's got plastic, I don't know, it's got everything. It's got the entire elemental chart is on there somewhere. And these, they actually have two, and they're on 35. So these are gateways into New Braunfels, as opposed to being gateways into a particular district. But it's a new style, I want to show it to you. It is lighted both internally and externally. And even though it was only built 3 years ago, they said they didn't remember how much they paid for it. So I didn't ask any more questions. This was McKinney. You might have seen this one recently. McKinney has a package of signs. They have 3 neon signs. One is a really big sign up on the roof of a building. And then they have 2 of them that are on poles. And they mark the borders to their downtown. Well, 2 mark the borders of the downtown, and one is an icon, or a very large beacon there in the middle of the downtown. And they put those in during 2020 and 2019. And then this next one, this is out of Lakeway. And this one is relatively new also, 2009. And this one, it is an artwork that is serving as a gateway sign. So it's a combination of 2 of the 4 different models. And if you count bushes as decorative landscaping, then it's 3, but they're bushes. We've seen prettier plants than that. So they did a community gathering, community engagement process to come up with ideas for the sign. They hired an artist and built this sign. And we do not have a price on that either, but that one probably is more than any of the other monument signs that you saw. So the next version is art features. And you'll see here we have art features in Old Town, quite a few. This one is kind of at the entrance to the Old Town core. And then these are down, well, this is at the train station, which is a portal into the Old Town. And this is on Main Street, just over there by Keeley. So this is very contemporary, very popular with cities right now to go with an art look, an artsy look, because it serves multiple purposes. It typically can be the most expensive of the 4, but art, it costs whatever you want to spend. If you want to spend $20,000, you get something of a certain type and size. If you want to spend $2 million, you get some of a much bigger type and a much bigger size. Generally, the art does not present the name of the district. It represents it as an icon. It's symbolic of the district, but it doesn't have a name, which is why sometimes you see it combined with other things. Usually, well, so public art, it says, typically placed at the physical edge of a district. It actually is sometimes just scattered around a district, so it's a repeat icon. We'll see an example of that in a minute. That is reflected by other art that's scattered around the district. Usually a vertical feature. I'll show you an example of one that's more of a square, kind of a horizontal, but most of them are vertical features, so you can see them as you approach. They get your attention. Kind of like, that's why I put this one here. It is vertical, and were it not for the fact that a tree now blocks the view, you would see it from very far away. Now you see a tree, and then you see that, and then you're in Old Town. Decision points there with art is, gosh, everything. There's a long list of decisions you have to make on that. And here's some examples. This is in Dallas. This is a bell tower done in a very classical style, a kind of a South American style that marks one of their Hispanic communities over there. It's La Torre de la Amistad. The next one is in San Antonio, also very vertical. This one's actually 60 feet tall. So it's seen from a very long distance, and it's supposed to reflect multiple things. It's in their South San Antonio district, and it's supposed to reflect railroad and also radio tower. And the next one is out of Dallas again, and this is a horizontal. This is down to the ground, not a vertical, and it's in a roundabout. It serves as the hub of the district instead of an entry into the district, and this is down there in the Oak Cliff neighborhood, built in 2010. The next one I want to show you, I told you, you can have them really, really big. This is really, really big. Deep Ellum, they have 3 traveling man sculptures. $1.4 million. Not proposing this one, but to show you that how they are used. And they have 3 of them that are very large, very metal, very modern, very hard to miss. And then Memphis, this one's kind of cool. They combine here public art with an overhead signage with an archway. This is the entrance to the Memphis Zoo at it's at Overton Park Gate. It's a bicycle gate for pedestrians and cyclists, so it's not a street here, it's for pedestrians and bicycles. And they had the community donated more than 300 bicycles, and the artist then, they already built the archway, and the artist did the bicycle art across the archway. And that was about $50,000 for the art. The arch was separate. So the art itself was $50,000, and most of that was to the artist because the bicycles were donated. Then we have decorative landscaping. And we do a little bit of it. It's the green ribbon stuff that the state installed on Business 121 and on 407. We've done a little bit on Mill Street. Unfortunately, then we had like the hottest hot and the coldest cold and the hottest hot again and the coldest cold again, and the plants just finally gave up and said, you know, we'll come back later when your weather is normal, which eventually we will. So this one often can be a little less expensive to install up front than a comparably sized sign, but it often costs more over time, especially if you have non-native plants or if you're putting in annuals, because you're paying to irrigate, you're paying to replace dead plants, or for annuals, you're paying to plant every year. They're almost always placed on a median, sometimes at a corner or a fork, and we'll show you some examples of that in Old Town. It often, but not always, includes signage, because very nice decorative landscaping by itself is hard to get a message across except, oh, those are pretty plants. I'll show you some examples of both. So this is what Irving, this is the flower clock at Las Colinas. It does have the name in big bushes. This is a really, really big, if you haven't seen it, it is a very large piece of plant sculpture and a working clock. So kind of art and plants. This was in Erie, Pennsylvania, and it's more native plantings, and they put it at the kind of access points into their downtown area. And they also have a sculpture trail that runs through downtown, and so they put sculptures in several of their plant areas to combine those two.
Only James makes it. You should have sent it from Epcot.
In case you missed the connection, I didn't have to tell you what this one is, because you know. You'll notice, though, there's no sign here, because in this case, the Mickey Mouse icon is so well known, you see Mickey Mouse, you know who he is, right? You know that it's Disney of some sort. Now, they do have a sign in the background, but if you took that away, you'd still know that icon.
By the time you're standing there, he is so deep in your wallet, you know.
By the time he's standing there, you are absolutely right. Now, that was installed in '71, we know that. So here's just possible locations, and folks, these are just to give you ideas to get you thinking. This is not saying we must put them here, or these are the very best, or James has actually talked to other departments, see what they think. No, this is just a map for conversation and to get thoughts going. So we tried to show where you could do overhead signage, or you can do ground level signage, or art, or landscaping. And we picked entries from the east, the west, and the south. I chose not to show anything coming from the north, because what we see from the north is that's mostly local traffic. It's mostly commuter traffic coming in and going back up. You would think Valley Ridge would be a great way to get into downtown, but we're not seeing that. They're just zipping down Valley Ridge. So looking over here, coming from the west, from 35, I'll start with the archways. The yellow ovals, if you wanted an archway here at the kind of the boundary of Old Town, it might be right around this area where the split is, right by the visitor center. Or if you wanted it visible from 35, you can put it way down here. Right here is where we have our overhead banner, and that's why we put it there. So you can put it anywhere along that stretch, but that's kind of the range. Coming up from the south, this one here is right in front of the elementary school, right before Purnell, so that the idea being that the boundary would be where the new housing is going in, the mill at Old Town. And we put it on both sides of that because it could go pretty much anywhere. You could put it farther south if you wanted to make Mill Street Elementary part of that district. You can put it farther north if you wanted to start it closer to the older buildings. And coming from the west, from the train station, there's one right here between Harris and Keeley on Church Street, because as you're entering, that's when you kind of enter the Old Town core. However, if you put it down here, near Railroad, you can see it from the train station. And as a marketer, I love seeing it from the train station. And eventually, this area will be more like the rest of Old Town. So it's kind of planning ahead, but it's there. That's just examples. For the ground level, we tried to identify locations that already exist that might be physically suitable. There's probably others, but I'll show you the three. This is the triangle. It's a triangle, I guess, median, in a way, in the middle of the street. It is in the middle. So we'll call it a median. And it's right outside of the visitor center, where Church and Main come back together. And the advantage here is we own it. The disadvantage, we've looked at doing a big landscaping display there as part of the lovable Old Town, and it's very expensive because there's no irrigation there. And getting irrigation there is not easy. So it might not work well for a planting, or if you do, it'd have to be probably above ground level planters, but then I'm out of my realm of expertise. I kill plants, I don't grow them. But this is a possibility also for art or signage. You see, we already use the flasher boards there, so people are used to that being an entry feature. Coming in from the train station, coming in from the east, this area was done as part of the Main and Mill Streetscape project, and it was designed where it could be used for any of those purposes. It already has nice landscaping, has a walkway. It could be used for signage, it could be used for art. This is the one, for those of you who remember Wayne Ferguson, or worked with Wayne Ferguson, this is where he really wanted to have a farm-driven art type piece. He always said, I've got a windmill on my ranch, I'll bring it out and set it up and you can decorate around it. And it just never happened. But this is where he had that in mind. And the advantage here is you see it as you're coming off the train station, coming off of Business 121. From the south, there's a similar triangle right here where Keeley and Mill split. Some disadvantages here, well, the big one is we don't own it. There's not a lot of potential for that site, so it might be accessible, but we don't own it. And you notice a utility pole right in the middle, so there's a lot of stuff underground here. So that's when I would be calling the experts and saying, if we dig here, will I die? So some difficulties, some challenges, but it is a possibility. And in that general area, you can see the construction right in the background of Mill at Old Town, where we said the archway could be there or it could be up here. So these are just some examples of where you might want to put entry features if we go that direction. And then the last slide here is just throwing questions out there for you. You'll notice no entry features here, but it's still kind of cool. I love the old pictures. First off, do you have interest in looking at entry features? And if so, do you have a preference on what type? And do you have a preference in terms of locations? And those are really kind of the questions that are thrown out there.
And council, really, this is really just a blue sky exercise with you guys, because staff certainly doesn't want to go down one path and bring you art, and you're like, I want an archway, or vice versa, right? So we wanted to, that's why we don't have any costs associated with it. We wanted to understand if the worst case scenario that I come out of here is none of you guys can agree, and I'm left in the same position I'm in right now. But if there is some type of consensus of direction of, that can help staff kind of go down a path, then we can start kind of honing in on what we would want to do, and then bring you back with some more details.
I would go with artistic arches.
I would go with arches.
I like the arches as well. I would stay away from the art itself. I think art's so subjective. I'd hate to put that out there, but the arches are classic. You can do a variety of things with them. I really like arches as well around that.
Well, this is kind of right up my alley. I kind of studied some of this in school. So, this, I think especially the arts thing, but I think this would be, if you could open this up to, I'm not saying a national design competition, but maybe a local design competition. I think some of the best ones are ones where you kind of throw it out there and see what mix architecture and art together. The Archway in St. Louis was a national design competition. The Galveston.
We won't go that big.
I know. the Galveston Gateway was a national design competition. So I think that's where you get your best thing. Let somebody come from outside and maybe mix it with the public, and then throw the history in there, and then you can kind of come up with what makes sense for them.
So I guess my pitch of a fiberglass Bob's Big Boy in farmer apparel with a pitchfork that shoots flames is off the table.
Like you put out an arch.
We want an arch? Okay, we're there. I'm good with the arch. I think a lot of the conversations I've had with folks in Old Town about this, they would like to see some sort of arch designation. The one by DCTA is interesting and might have an opportunity to talk with DCTA about maybe a collaboration there to emphasize the rail part of that, because they're going to be building so much down there. But in general, I think the arches. I love that Corsicana one with the uplight. I think that's just. But I agree. Let's have the artsy people come up with what that maybe looks like across the top.
And you might want to do motif, the different ones with a different type of motif according to the historical significance of that particular area, just like on Purnell, well, it was a little north of there, but we had the only cotton gin in the county.
Had the cotton gin and also had one of the largest pecan groves in
Oh,
town.
absolutely, it was
Right
a
there
pecan
on the Fox
orchard.
Property, yeah.
That's
And
why,
then
if
if you look
you'll
on the-
look, all the pecan trees are planted in a row.
If they're straight line, there wasn't squirrels.
Yeah.
On the east is close to the train, where the train station has
That's
been
what they
since
thought, you're
1880s.
laughing at him, but it's
That's
true.
true. If they're in the squirrels don't do that.
Yeah,
Train station, 1880s, all the way to now, there's been a railroad track there, so you could go
right.
east.
So a different motif on those arches signifying that, you know, that showing the significance of that particular area would be
That's a good idea.
just awesome. And I'm not so sure that when we have the master plan and stuff of the lake, that we don't do something out there.
Oh yeah, I'm not ruling that out at all, just not on this map.
I like the archway idea. I like the Beaumont one because it has a little light. But I'm not- But again, I'm not an artist, so, or an architect. I just like that one. I just can kind of see like coming in from Business 121 or coming in from the south or coming in from, you know, you get this big grand thing. Now, what I do like as well is, I like the art piece of it as you get closer in. Because it becomes a little more eclectic, it gives you more things to look at. But I mean, if we're prioritizing, I would say the arches first, and then as we come in, we can figure out how to place art, interesting places to stop and view for people as they kind of walk from the train station, because I love the native plantings, but they get, you know, you can't find a sidewalk sometimes, so. But I think those are, that's a great start, and then maybe we can, as we get more and more ideas, we say, okay, we can plant some art in these different places.
I just want to be careful on the art piece if we concentrate too much in Old Town. I still like the idea of spreading that around. We've got lots of other places in the city where we can share the love, I think. What I do like about the lighting, now that you mention it, that creates more of a nighttime district feel.
Yeah, it does.
So something like that, I think down here would, you know, liven it up a little bit.
I thought the bike trail one was pretty
That
cool
was
too. It just made me think of all the lime green bikes. I thought that's what they were
That's what they ended up? That's what they ended up.
Flashing neon, a sign like McKinney says light rental, light rental.
That would be something maybe way down the line, but something like that to kind of emphasize our.
James?
Not important.
At one point, if you go down to Purnell and Keeley, at one point, I can remember a plan for that particular triangle. And I don't even remember what date, what year I saw that. It was when they were having charrettes and stuff on.
Was it last century?
I promise you, he is not coming home from Austin. He is gonna be in the guano caves. Where Mill Street was going one way and Keeley was going another.
There was talk about a couplet, that was around,
That was 2000.
it was right after the
remember
Miller, so it was around
meetings on
2006 or 7,
Yeah,
it
it
was
was-
talked about.
Okay,
It was this.
so that was trash. Okay, I was just thinking about that arch right there at that school. It'd be nice if we could go right here, but I don't know how.
I like the idea of having it by the school, that incorporates them into the Old Town area.
Yeah,
And it's a newer building, but it's a very classic look. I just
that's
drove by the
true,
other
but
day,
it would
so-
need to come on the south side of Purnell. Because that intersection with those apartments it's very busy. And it would take away from the, focal point of the apartments.
Okay. Well, I think we've got consensus on where to go.
Yeah, that was great.
You're not lost anymore.
No, I'm perfectly on point with you now.
All right. Well, I think that does it for our workshop. We need to go back, and we do have something for closed session. So we'll need to go back in there, go into closed session, and come back in.
Was that?
All right. You have to get your steps in. That's why I got the cheesecake. I needed fuel. There we go. All right. We are done with workshops, and now we're going to move into closed session. So in accordance with Texas Government Code Subchapter D, Section 551.072, Real Estate Property Acquisition, Section 551.087, Economic Development Deliberation Regarding Economic Development Negotiations, and Section 551.074, Personnel, City Secretary discuss the hiring of a new City Secretary and all matters incident and related thereto. We are going back into closed session.
There we go, I got a green light, we're good to go. All right, council, do we have any motions or action to be taken?